This study session of the Board of Education for February 12, 2014 is called to order. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. While our study sessions are generally limited to our receipt of information from staff and discussion of that information and review of resolutions prior to a vote, at times we conduct votes during study sessions. Any item that will be voted on this evening has been posted as required by state law. This meeting is being televised live and will be replayed through the next 2 weeks. Please check the board website for replay times. This meeting is also being streamed live on our PPS TV services website. So at this time we'll have public comment. Ms. Houston, is anyone signed up for public comment?
We have 6. Our first 2 speakers, Teresa Rayford and Kathy Garris.
Okay, while you're coming forward, I'll go ahead and read the rules or the instructions prior to public comment. There's another person. Yeah. Thank you very much for taking the time to come to our board meeting. We deeply value public input and we look forward to hearing your thoughts, reflections, and concerns. Our responsibility as a board lies in actively listening and reflecting on the thoughts and opinions of others. Guidelines for public input emphasize respect and consideration when referring to board members, staff, and other presenters. The board will not respond to any comments or questions at this time, but board or staff will follow up on various issues that are raised. Please make sure you have left your contact information, either a phone number or an email, on the sign-up sheet. Pursuant to Board Policy 1.70.012, speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning individual district personnel. Any complaints about specific employees should be directed to the superintendent's office and will not be heard in this forum. You have a total of 3 minutes to share your comments. Please begin by stating your name and spelling your last name. During the first 2 minutes of testimony, a green light will appear. When you have 1 minute remaining, a yellow light will appear. And when your time is up, a red light will go on and a buzzer will sound, and we respectfully ask that you conclude your comments at that time. We sincerely appreciate your input and thank you again for your cooperation. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me. My name is Kathy Garris, G-A-R-R-I-S. Good evening, board members. It is truly a pleasure to formally meet you all. My 3 daughters are all students at Vestal. For those unfamiliar, it's located right on 82nd Avenue in between Gleason and Burnside. It teaches and serves around 400 kindergarten through 8th grade students, many of whom live in households that are low income and or ESL. To inform you all, there are actually over 20 languages spoken in the homes of our school's children. It is an amazingly diverse school and I love it. Despite any outside challenges it may face, the teachers and staff are positive, enthusiastic, and guide my children and their friends through learning, playing, and solving problems for hours each day. I send my kids to school so they may pursue an adventure of learning while on their individual quests for knowledge and understanding. I fully trust and support their teachers to inspire, teach, and lead my girls along that journey. On a day-to-day basis, our teachers deal with children that are growing up in a world full of inequity. Most of us here in this room, in Portland, in this world, together seek to find solutions to the problems of society. It's time we all address racial as well as socioeconomic injustices that are occurring today in 2014 and start asking questions that will help bring real answers to solve the actual problems that cause stressful and poor living conditions for our families. While we all strive for that, in a nutshell, we here today find ourselves still talking about a PPS contract dilemma. From what I recall as a parent, the contract problem was last year's problem. Why are we still here today in 2014 discussing that same contract dilemma? By this board's inability to negotiate successfully or to be creative in finding a solution that will work, you have all demonstrated collectively that you are not working for the students' best interests. You have forced a strike on the Portland Association of Teachers. You have instigated tension in and amongst our schools in addition to the whole community, and it needs to stop. You can prevent a strike. Only your board has the ability to prevent a strike by having successful, fair, and productive negotiations. You have the opportunity to do what's right for our children, give them the best resource imaginable, the teachers that they already have. And those very teachers are going to walk out of our schools on February 20th, and you can't let that happen. I encourage you all to be reasonable. I urge you to avert a strike by signing a fair contract in good faith If you allow a strike to happen, the potential effects felt by the community could be agonizing. Fellow parents and I agree that it is time to get this show on the road. This board needs to be responsible and negotiate a fair contract in good faith before a strike occurs and causes further disruption among our community. If you all cannot reach an agreement and the strike does go on, families' lives will be disrupted. Don't let that happen. Parents, students, Portland citizens, and people all over this world are standing up with teachers and supporting them in this time of need. I am Kathy Garris. I am a Portland Public School parent, and I am one of many that stand with the Portland Association of Teachers.
Thank you very much.
I'd also like to suggest a better negotiation space, maybe a larger table in an area with
Thank
more
you.
dimensions and windows.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Our next two speakers, Rick Bellevue and Margie Brown. You first, I think.
Start?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rick Bellevue, B-E-L-L-I-V-E-A-U. Members of the board, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk before you. I've been involved with, my son is a freshman at Grant High School, and my involvement with PPS goes way back to 1998 when my stepdaughter Anna started at Laurelhurst Elementary. She went on to go through Da Vinci Middle School and graduated from Grant a few years ago. My son Henry started at Sabin in 2003, attended Access Academy, Metropolitan Learning Center, and is now a freshman at Grant, like I said. Through all these years, I've been involved as a volunteer in the schools, and I've made significant financial contributions. It also seems like through all these years, PPS has just moved through one crisis after the other. I particularly remember in 2003 in the funding crisis and the notoriety that Portland gained through the national comic strip Doonesbury, and getting calls from my relatives back in New Hampshire about what's going on in Portland. I've also witnessed over the years a lot of my friends, good friends, leaving Portland or leaving PPS to either go to schools in Vancouver, Washington, to attend private schools or charter schools. And this is a shame. And in this climate, it's easy to see how a person could get very discouraged and accept the idea that public schools will only continue to get worse, classrooms more crowded. And from what I understand about this proposal from the district, it at best maintains the status quo, but parents, teachers, and students are getting to have higher expectations. And I'll leave you with a story about my son Henry. I recently brought him down to the strike vote because he wanted to go down to support his teachers and say hello. And after we stood around for a while and held signs and chanted some supportive slogans, as we were leaving, he turned around and he said to me, "Dad, I'm really glad that I'm going to public schools right now because I feel like I'm doing something that's important, like I'm making a difference in public education or being a part of it." And I would like to say that right now you have a chance to do that as well. You have a chance to teach a lesson to Henry and to his fellow students that by standing up to do what's right, you can actually make a change for the better.
Chairperson Knowles and the board and Superintendent Smith, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Margie Brown, M-A-R-G-I-B-R-O-W-N. As a grandparent of a senior IB student at Cleveland, I am very concerned about a strike and the impact it will have on parents and students in the district. I worry about how a strike might impact her IB credit. However, after monitoring the negotiations since the beginning, it appears to me that the district's current offer is fair to teachers and meets most of the union's initial asks, maintaining a generous health insurance benefit, continuing workload limits, maintaining the shortest workday hours of districts in the area. Salary increases for all teachers over the 3 years of the contract, and a commitment to hire as many new teachers and support staff as is budget sustainable. It concerns me that when it sounded like negotiations were close to an agreement at the end of December, the union appeared to up the ante. I do not want to see the progress made on issues related to hiring and transfer reduced. This contract needs to allow the district to hire earlier and compete for the best candidates, especially in math, science, special education, and for language immersion programs. In order to place the best candidates in every classroom, competency needs to be part of the decision in order for teachers to be placed in an appropriate fit where they can do their best work. I urge the board to hold fast to the principles of streamlined transfer and assignment processes that allow early hiring and application of state definition of competency for all assignments and reductions in force. Without these changes, we cannot achieve the Student Achievement Compact and milestone goals that are critical to serve our children. Thank you.
Our last two speakers, Sheila Griffin and Jim Anderson.
Does that mean I get 6 minutes? Okay, my name is Sheila Griffin, Griffin. I am a parent of two Portland Public School students, and I've been involved in, Creston, Sunnyside, Abernathy, Hosford, and Cleveland schools as a parent. I'm here today to talk about the following issues: class size, teachers hired this year, and adding schools days to the school year. My concern is I've been to the past 3 board meetings and I've seen the information that's been put up on the screen, and my concern is that it is unclear and misleading. I'm a parent that works as a professional in the schools, and I've seen the class sizes around the district. There are classes in 1st and 2nd grade that are that are 33 students and upwards. 33 students in one class is too many. The students get one chance at that grade level. They don't get a second chance to go through 1st or 2nd grade. More students means that teachers can do less with those students, plain and simple. There's no two ways around it. I've spoken with some teacher friends, and we agree that given too many students, a great teacher can become a mediocre teacher. A mediocre teacher can become a bad teacher. And I don't want any of Portland Public School students to have a bad teacher because of class size. We love our kids' teachers, and we know they work hard. I don't believe it's the fault of the teachers when I say that can turn them into a bad teacher. We know their classrooms are often overcrowded. I am feeling that I no longer trust the district. As I said, when I see what's put up on the screen, I feel like it's misleading. It's not clear of what's going on. And so there were some points that I felt I needed to come and make a public comment and point out. I recently learned that the total number of teachers in the district has actually decreased since last May. That doesn't fit with what I hear when I come to board meetings. So I don't know what is going on, but the statistics I've seen has shown that there are less teachers teaching now in the district than there were last May. I'm also frustrated and angry that the district, that you say you've added 88 teachers and you put it up on the screen as though it's a contract concession and it's something that you're doing, when it's also my understanding that those 88 teachers were hired on money that came through the state, and that was required. There wasn't an option on what to do with that money. It was to hire teachers. Adding 2 days of work and paying teachers for that time worked is not a pay increase. And I see it go up on the screen as a 1.05% pay increase. It's not a pay increase. Pay for work done, plain and simple, is pay for work done. It's not a pay increase. Okay, you're also taking away early retirement incentive from teachers that overall saves the district money. This is mean-spirited and fiscally irresponsible.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you again for your comments, everyone. Make sure that Ms. Houston has your contact information. You see? Okay.
This is Jim Anderson.
Okay. Did you hear the instructions about public comment, Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Jim Anderson, Anderson. In order to have a successful business, you have to respond to your customers. PPS customers are the students and their parents. When was the last time you acted on what students wanted? If not that, when was the last time you even asked what students wanted? When was the last time you acted on what parents wanted? The answers to these questions are that you listen to Washington and the unions, but not students or parents. You are ignoring your customers. Do you think late start days are appreciated by your customers? No, they are not. So make the teachers' training happen after school. Do you think parents appreciate unpaid students grading other students' work that contributes to a final grade? No, they don't. Make teachers grade all students' papers. Do you think parents like high, middle, and low achieving students in the same class? No, they don't. And even teachers say it's challenging. I asked a teacher if my child could work ahead of the class and be recognized. The teacher said, no, your child must move at the pace I set for the whole class. Do you think parents want to know how their students are graded? I have asked a teacher and a principal how final grades are calculated, and they could not even tell me. The list goes on, and PPS ignores their customers. Are you going to take action on students' public comments? Not unless it aligns with your plan. You won't change your plan to meet their requests. In order to engage students, you need to trust them. You need to show trust by giving them control. You reward success by giving them more control. This is how people learn to innovate. Students want to change. When I walk into a PPS or look at the school curriculum, I see a school that looks very much like the schools I went to. The school system led by the Department of Education and the unions does not change. In the final analysis, how do you gauge your success? You have to look at how successful student graduates are at getting jobs. In January 2014, according to the BLS, unemployment among 20 to 24-year-old non-disabled persons is over 60%. Student loan debt exceeds $1 trillion. Whatever you're teaching them, it's not helping. Something big needs to change. Given the dismal track record of PPS, I would not give in to teachers' demands until significant positive changes happen to both student performance and youth unemployment rates. Don't give in to striking terrorists. I support your call to be able to hire and fire teachers based on performance and not seniority. To succeed, you have to take risks. I also ask you to take risks and innovate with students and parents leading the way.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the collective bargaining update. Superintendent Smith, would you like to present this item?
I would. So as you know, our Portland Association of Teachers authorized a strike on February 5th and then gave notice of intent to strike effective February 20th. Both sides have continued to meet with the mediator. So we met this past week on the 10th and on the 11th. We've exchanged proposals and then have a plan to continue exchange of proposals. And I would say that both sides are working really hard to come to an agreement, get to a settlement. At the same time, the district has been working on hard on plans for service continuation should in fact the teachers strike. So we are working both paths really solidly. We have currently posted up on our website, and that is at www.pps.net, frequently asked questions that are if teachers strike. Here's the school information, and it's posted in all of our major languages. There will also be some community meetings that are answering questions, and as parents feed us the questions that they're asking, we're working to provide that information, and it's being updated frequently. I want to just run through, once again, the district's mediation officer and key points in that, and it's the core points. So you need to know that we're working through a lot of interests. The things that and that continues to change. The points that I'll read to you tonight are really the core items that I just want to be really clear, because people ask us questions about what is included in the district's mediation offer. And that includes the salary over 3 years of contract, which is steps, which is roughly 3.5% plus 2% per year over the 3 years of the contract. The 1.05% for 2 additional days, which would be adding 2 instructional days to the year. We are saying the 1.05% to indicate that it is additional pay for days worked, as opposed to thinking of that as a raise. It's just being clear, it's not asking people to work for days they're not being paid for. The salary increase that's referenced here would be between a 7 and 17% increase for every teacher over the life of the contract. And it's a broad range because teachers are at different steps on the salary scale, so would be the steps are the thing that are the variation there. Insurance, the district's proposal has insurance being kept at status quo, which means the district would maintain its current share of insurance premiums at 93%, which is approximately $1,397 per month. Professional educators would maintain their current share of 7%, which is about $117 per month. The early retirement incentive, which includes both, right now, both health insurance and a monthly stipend, would be sunsetted over the life of the contract. So that's our current proposal. The change in hiring practices would go from what is currently 3 rounds of internal hiring, that would be reduced to a single round of internal hiring during spring staffing, and using the state definition of competence when making layoff and transfer decisions. The conversations about workload relief, and here you've got a more complex conversation because we're talking about staffing is really something that happens as part of a budgeting process, and it's a public budgeting process. When we're talking about the $7.8 million that was part of the legislative grand bargain, which is targeted for school staffing. So when it was designated, it was to provide school staffing, which could be teachers, it could be classified staff, it could be instructional time. And what we've said in a memo of understanding as part of our proposal is that we would dedicate all $7.8 million to professional educators as part of our budgeting process, but we're making it clear at least 88 additional teachers would be included expressly for workload reduction. That's only a piece of the budgeting process, so we're just at the front end of our budget process, and there in fact could be additional teachers that are added as part of that and additional school staff. So it's just to make a commitment that you understand here's what could be different next year in terms of workload. There's also an updating of a workload provision that's currently in the contract that references the year 97-98, which would propose to update to 2010-11 levels and to reach those levels by 2016-17. Another piece of joint work at the table has been to establish a workload committee that would both look at immediate situations raised by individual teachers where they feel they have unfair workload situation that needs resolution and the ability to bring that forward. And it would be a committee that's both 5 PAT members and 5 district administrators who are able to hear those and figure out and propose solutions. Secondly, that committee would be looking at larger workload issues that could end up in recommendations for budgetary or advocacy kind of avenues to address those. So this is where I would just say the conversations about workload relief have been really productive and really joint problem solving about how do we actually address something that everybody cares about. And the mechanism for doing that is complex in terms of what belongs in a contract and what belongs in a budget. Student instructional days, the district's mediation proposal currently proposes to add 2 instructional days to the school calendar for K through 8 students and add 3 instructional days for high school students. It also allows for continuation of the 8-period high school schedule in such a manner to meet the Oregon Department of Education course hour requirements. And actually back to the $7.8 million from the grand bargain, that is intended to be spread across the entire K through 12 spectrum and also includes special education students. So there's been concern about whether it would be specifically all at high school level. Now the conversation has been across the entire system. So that's what the proposal that is currently on the table. And with that, I will again direct your attention back to the website for more questions about service continuation plans should we actually be in a strike, and know that we're really working hard to get an agreement and to avert that situation. So,
Great. Thank you very much, Superintendent Smith. As Superintendent Smith indicated, we've been working very hard with the Portland Association of Teachers to try and reach a negotiated settlement. At the same time, it's our obligation as a board to prepare for strike and to provide safe learning environments for all of our students. To that end, the staff has prepared a resolution temporarily delegating certain authority to the superintendent. I'm going to ask Director Belisle to read through that resolution, and then we will consider it as a board.
Thank you, Director Knowles. And this resolution will be posted on the website after our meeting for those who are looking for it or interested in it. This is resolution number 4872, temporary delegation of authority. We're going to start with the recitals. Recital A, between April 2013 and February 2014, the Portland Public School District, the district, and Portland Association of Teachers, Association, or PAT, engaged in collective bargaining for a successor collective bargaining agreement. The prior collective bargaining agreement between the district and the association was effective through June 30th, 2013. Recital B. The association held a strike vote on February 5th, 2014. On February 6th, 2014, the district received notice that the PAT intended to call a strike that would commence on February 20th, 2014. Recital C. It is the board's goal to reach a negotiated settlement with PAT. However, the district must also plan in the event that the PAT chooses to strike. Recital D. More than 48,000 students attend PPS schools, and the district provides 11,000 school breakfasts, 21,000 school lunches, and 3,000 suppers to students every day. The Board of Education believes that providing a safe and secure environment during a strike is important to the educational interests, health, safety, and welfare of our students. The board is charged by law with the management, recital E. The board is charged by law with the management and control of school district grounds and other property, preservation of health, safety, and education of students within the school district, the maintenance and preservation of educational opportunities and facilities, and the dedication of school district property to the educational uses for which its properties are intended. Recital F. The existence of a strike emergency circumstance requires the expenditure of funds for temporary replacement personnel, other personnel, and other expenses such as services, materials, and supplies. Recital G. The district will need to employ personnel, including temporary replacement workers for the striking employees, in order to operate the schools under the emergency circumstances caused as a result of a strike. Recital F. Funds were not specifically appropriated for strike emergency purposes in the 2013-14 budget, as this emergency could not have been foreseen at the time of preparation of the budget. Resolution. Resolved 1. The Board of Education declares that a state of emergency now exists as a result of the February 6, 2014 notice from the Portland Association of Teachers. The board declares that this state of emergency will exist until the board terminates it by resolution. Resolved 2. The board authorizes the expenditure of funds as may be necessary pursuant to ORS 294.338.3. Such expenditures may include, but are not limited to, payment of wages to and transportation and safety of personnel. To the extent the expenditure of such funds are not covered by existing appropriations, they are deemed appropriated from the general fund operating contingency. The foregoing funds may be dispersed for such purposes. Following the termination of the state of emergency, the superintendent will provide a report to the board regarding the expenditure of funds under this resolution. Resolved 3. The board authorizes that in the state of emergency, the superintendent is authorized to temporarily suspend the operation of select district policy and/or district administrative regulations necessary to provide the best feasible program and services for students under emergency circumstances. Resolved 4. In the state of emergency, the board delegates to the superintendent or her designee authority pursuant to District Public Contracting Rule PPS 4502004BD to execute district contracts that she deems necessary to address the state of emergency. These contracts will also be reported to the board as part of the regular contracting report. Resolved 5. In the state of emergency, the board delegates to the superintendent the authority to develop and adopt regulations as guided by state and federal law regarding public access to school district property in order to provide for the security of students, staff, and facilities. Resolved 6. The board further directs that if the superintendent finds there is a concern for the health, safety, or welfare of the students, public, or personnel, the superintendent or her designee will have the authority to temporarily close any district school facility and/or consolidate the students and programs to another location. And finally, resolved 7, the board further directs this resolution to take effect immediately.
Thank you, Director Blau.
Yes.
The board will now consider Resolution 4872, temporary delegation of authority. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Director Regan moves and Director Adkins seconds the motion to adopt Resolution 4872. Is there any board discussion of the resolution? Director Buell?
Well, I'm not in favor of trying to keep all of our schools open. I think there's better plans. I just wanted to point out that I'm voting for this resolution. It's just merely a resolution which says, as we go forward, if there's a strike, that the superintendent can do what she needs to do to keep kids safe and to make things go clear. So this isn't something that anybody should get upset about. This is just good stuff. And so I'm kind of shoving that out there for people who are paying attention to this stuff carefully. This is, even the part where it talks about dealing with people on the property, carefully, there's not going to be anybody out there taking away anybody's basic First Amendment rights. And so there you go, for what that's worth.
Thank you. Other board members?
I agree with what Director Buell was saying, but I would just like to say to the board and to PAT leadership how truly embarrassing it is that we even have to consider this. I mean, as a community, it's really quite sad, honestly. So,
Thank you. Director Blau?
I agree with what both my colleagues have said, but I also just want to assure our community that while we're taking these steps, we are still looking for negotiated settlement, but that we do take very seriously the safety and security of our students and families, and we understand the challenges this will present and the impact this will have on our community. And I just want to let folks know that we are pursuing both tracks with due diligence and commitment, because we have to plan for both. Obviously, we prefer one, but in the event we find ourselves in a situation to need the emergency delegation, I just want to assure folks that staff are diligently planning for that, and we as a board are taking that really seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Director Atkins?
I'd agree, and just want to add thanks to all the staff at all levels of the district who are working really hard to deal with, obviously, an extremely challenging situation, but just appreciate that. And again, thank you for clarifying that. And thank you, Director Beal, for your remarks. I appreciate that a lot.
Dr. Regan?
I also just wanted to add that as Oregon's economy improves and as the state legislature is finally starting to reinvest in education, it's just so sad to me that we're at this point in time. It seems to me that we as a community could have come together and celebrated that. We know that during the next budget cycle, we are going to be investing more in our schools. We finally have the ability to invest more. We're going to add instructional days. We're going to add teachers. We know that the workload issues are probably as low as they've been, where they're going to get better all the time. It's inconceivable to me that we are at this place in time right now that we're facing a strike. It makes no sense for our kids and our community. Through the budget process, we are going to be adding teachers. We're going to be helping in terms of the workload issues. We're looking at added instructional time. We ought to be holding hands and celebrating.
And I just only add that I think it's all of our expectations that we will be doing that very soon. And appreciate your update, Superintendent Smith, on negotiations. And it's certainly our firm belief that we can get there. Certainly hasn't been easy. It certainly hasn't been pretty. But we all believe we can get there. So thank you.
I guess I just want to thank all my colleagues. I agree with all of you. I would really love to be celebrating right now, and I'm looking forward to and very hopeful that we reach this negotiated settlement. So if there's no more discussion, let's go ahead and vote on Resolution 4872. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Resolution 4872 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Davidson voting.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, our next agenda item is the high school graduation rate. Superintendent Smith, would you like to introduce this item?
I would. I'm going to invite Sue Ann Higgins, who's our Chief Academic Officer, and Sarah Singer, who is her assistant, and Tripp Goodall, who's the Director of High Schools, to come on up. Last week, the state released the graduation rates for the entire state, and we're going to walk you through Portland Public Schools data. So, Sue Ann.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to join you this evening and walk through what is positive trending of our four-year graduation cohort rate once again. And we have, yeah, so let's start with that. We have worked hard to compress. So any single page of data that we have before you tonight could be a full 2-hour presentation to really fully unpack it. And so we're going to ask yours and the community's forgiveness just for trying to do broad brushstrokes, and then also subsequently we'll connect this to the ongoing work that we've been doing in the high school action team. So, to begin with, the Portland Public Schools four-year cohort graduation rate has, at this time, we're happy to say is 67% for the 2012-13, so the graduating class of 2013. And that demonstrates a 14 percentage point gain since 2009 graduation. So we continue to see positive trending going in the direction that we want, and we also have the opportunity to explore what's working and where we still have continued work clearly laid out in front of us. So we'll talk some more about that. So this next slide demonstrates PPS's graduation rate growth since 2008 relative to the state of Oregon. So while Oregon is also trending up, PPS is pulling that rate up at a much steeper rate. And so we're happy to see that what it looks like from the state perspective, and to see PPS as a subset of our state's growth. So we want to continue to accelerate our growth, but we are pleased to see that clearly the work of our high school system redesign has taken hold, and we see we're moving in the right directions. So one snapshot of the data is to look at our graduation rate and the trend in percentage points since the 9-10 school year. So this is our comprehensive and focus high schools, and the vast majority of our schools are up, and some of them really, really large jumps. So it's absolutely incredible to celebrate jumps such as those seen at Roosevelt High School, at Franklin High School, at Jefferson High School, at Cleveland High School. So schools across the system, really distinctly unique schools, all of whom demonstrate just very positive progress. Wilson High School, 8 percentage points, Madison High School, 7 percentage points over time, Grant High School up 2 percentage points, and Benson High School up 6 percentage points. So our highest performing school was Lincoln High School, and their rate is flat or slightly backwards over that, the arc of those years. So very excited.
Yeah, I mean, another key point here is when you look at the trending since 09-10, that's really when we started to implement much of the high school system design recommendations.
I also just, for folks that are looking at this, try to make sense of it, because I noticed, for example, Lincoln for 2 years actually went up, and then this last year they went down, just to remind folks that these are different cohorts of kids. The trending is the important part, you know, because each group and each grade has unique characteristics. I guess I just wanted to note that.
That's correct. And the higher performing the school, there are unique challenges to increasing that rate over time as well. So, but what we see overall is high school results getting better for kids across the system. Yes.
The increase in Roosevelt over these last 3 years was also when we had a federal grant supporting that school for 3 years, and that was a $7 million grant. So, you know, a lot of times we hear it's not about the money, and in many ways it isn't, but in many ways it sure is, because what money buys is more personnel, more individualized supports for struggling students, a whole variety of supports that we've put into that school. Great leadership, great teachers, great tutoring, a whole lot of things that help see results like that, but money does matter.
I would add to all of that list, partners, the ability to innovate, and partners. Yep. So good.
Exactly, and so I think to that point, it's not about money, it's about strategically invested resources. And so in this case, a phenomenal teacher corps at Roosevelt, and just incredible dedication across all of the professionals there, a staff that have gone above and beyond, in addition to the programs that Director Regan mentioned. So tutoring supports, social work supports. Roosevelt is one of the schools that's also benefited from our high school graduation initiative grant from the federal government simultaneous with their SIG grant. And so, so we have had really strong strategies, and part of the work that we've been able to do in the high school action team was to really capture, so what's working in our system for our students, where are we closing gaps, where are we accelerating learning for all. So next we want to just look at our high school completion rates. So the state uses two significant metrics for high schools. One is the four-year cohort graduation rate, meaning how many of the kids who started their 9th grade year in the same year graduate in 4 years or on time as it's thought of. And then we also believe that it's really valuable that the state is also using the cohort 5-year completion rate. And the completion rate includes graduation, so the general ed diploma, but it also includes students who graduated with a modified diploma, an extended diploma, an adult high school diploma, or a GED. And so adding those other kinds of credentials, we see progress for our students. And so it's clear that our continued investment in students beyond 4 years does pay off for our students and our community at large. The second, the lower section of this data also then shows you information about by the definition of accountable schools, which of our alternative schools, Alliance High School, MLC, and then our 2 charter high schools that are also accountable schools in terms of cohort rate. So, and these numbers are really complex to understand. So in the cohort graduation rate, student completion, whether that's diploma or a 5-year completion by some other credential, is attributed based on where they started their freshman year and then where they actually complete. And so, so there's a complex metric here. And one of the things that is important to note is that when you look at these schools, the circumstances that accumulate a graduation rate, say for a Madison High School or Roosevelt High School, are different than those for Benson High School, simply because Benson is not a neighborhood school, so it doesn't have the same kids attributed back to its graduation rate. And however, students who leave our gen ed system and go into our alternative system during high school, when they complete, if they are not an accountable high school, one of these that's been listed or one of our charter or alternative schools within the district, their graduation rate is attributed back to the school that they started in. So, and we could spend 2 more hours also digging into cohort graduation rate as well.
So I don't want to belabor this, but I just think that's a really important distinction, that if somebody starts in one of our accountable high schools,
yes,
and then people say we push them out into alternative schools, if and when they complete at that alternative school, their graduation or completion or lack thereof is attributed back to their accountable high school.
That's correct. Yep.
The people, when we look at graduation rates of 9% or 10% at some of our alternative high schools, primarily, or excuse me, are exclusively kids who never entered one of our main system high schools but went directly to that alternative high school upon coming to Portland or into the system. Is that correct?
So it means that they both entered after their freshman year and that they went only to another school.
Thank you. I know it's really confusing for folks.
It is. So, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. More could be said. All right, so we'll continue here. So one of the critical evaluations we do is our racial achievement gap. So what we want to look at is how are students of all races doing relative to others. And so the 0 line on this particular way of representing this data is our white student graduation rate. So what we're looking at here are disproportionate rates of success, and you've got 4 years of data here. Now this is a really complicated data view. So if you look across the bottom, you see the percentage of each of those 4 years. So on the far left-hand side is data for our American Indian, Alaskan Native students. The next set of columns are our Asian students, slightly outperforming over the last 4 years. Our white students, Black and African American students in the next box. Hispanic or Latino students is the next set of data. Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and finally multiracial. So one clear piece of data here is that a racial achievement gap clearly still exists for us. And so this is an area for our continued focus and attention and resources and improvement of practice.
Sue, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but for those folks that are following along at home, we have an actual inverted copy of this graph. So if somebody's trying to make sense of what they're seeing on the, I'm sorry, on the website.
Oh, okay.
So just know that they're reversed
Okay.
on the site that we're
interesting.
seeing.
Good, okay. Oh, wow.
As compared to that. But it's comparing the 2009-10 to 2012-13. So again, it's a trend number.
In graduation.
Right.
And graduation rates, yep.
So these are just a couple of other slices at our data. So looking at what is the impact of poverty on our graduation rate. So our overall graduation rate is 67%, but that for our students who qualify for free and reduced meals is only 58%, so we see a gap there. Although we do see that has trended up slightly by 2 percentage points this year. Emerging bilingual students, we see there's a considerable graduation gap for those students as well, and yet also trending in the right direction. For students who are identified for services from special education, we see a really, really serious impact in our graduation rate for those students. So we have very, very clear work to do to support those students and get them across that particular finish line. Yet we see this is trending in the right direction as well, up 7 percentage points. Female students trending in the right direction, but we clearly do have a gap in terms of the impact of gender on graduation. And so we're paying close attention to this. We see that males, the rate for male students graduating in our system is approaching that of our overall graduation rate and increased by 5 percentage points. So we believe that our attention there is continuing to have an impact.
So I'm sorry, could we go back up to the racial achievement gap?
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're really clear and transparent about what's happening here, and that you could, I know you're trying to get through a whole lot of super detailed and complex data here, but this is a pretty important slide. So,
yes.
So if I'm reading this correctly, well, it's hard because in some of the subgroups, numbers are going up and down each year, but we're seeing overall a worsening of the achievement gap, if I'm reading this correctly, in some groups, particularly Black, African American.
That is correct for Black African American.
And lessening, although it's up a little bit from last year, lessening among Latino students.
That is correct.
Kind of flat overall, multiracial.
Yes.
And then, let's see, Native, American Indian, Alaska Native. I'm sorry, I'm doing this in a disjointed fashion. If you could just walk us through this and
yes.
just highlight it, please.
Yes. So the piece of data that may be most helpful is really looking at these rates at the bottom.
Okay.
So you see over these 4 years, and particularly between last year and this year for Native American students, a change from 29%, just profoundly unacceptable rate for us, to 44%, so an increase of 15 percentage points between those 2 years. So we still have significant disproportion there, but are pleased with that movement, and the 4-year trend being up 5 percentage points total for Native American, Alaska Native students. So that's our first column here. The next column over is clearly showing that the rate for our African American students is not improving as the overall rate for PPS students is. And so this is very deeply concerning to me. So you have, over the last 4 years, variation of only a percentage point, and off our overall graduation rate by over 12 percentage points.
And then, but last year, we had fantastic closing of the achievement gap at a number of our comprehensive schools. So
Yes.
I know there may not be time in this particular presentation, but I definitely want to flag this for more discussion and understanding of what's going on. And it felt like last year we were really, finally closing the gaps in some significant ways.
Yes.
And so just want to bring this out as obviously a concern for everybody here.
Thank you, yes. Next, if you look at Latino students, and again, so the 4-year trend, you go from 40% to now 57%. So we see a significant closing of the gap there, including a 3 percentage point increase from last year to this year. So that's the
big bright
we
spot,
want to
yeah.
accelerate that sort of trending.
Right.
Over 4 years, and certainly between years. Our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students, over time, this rate has improved significantly, although it went backwards between last year and this year. And the 2 cohorts that are our smallest number of students are our Native American, Alaskan Native students, as well as our Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander students. And so these are the cohorts that are likely to have the biggest variation year
Right.
to year, because a smaller number of students has a bigger numeric impact.
Right.
And then finally, our multiracial students, we still see the impact of our racial opportunity gaps on these students, and so clear work to be done there as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
the number on the boxes.
Yes.
Like, let's just take the African American black box.
Okay.
So minus 12, minus 19. What does that mean?
That is the gap from the white graduation rate.
Okay. Okay, and then the other numbers are just the graduation rate, period.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
And can I
Yeah.
just double check that, depending on whether it was 2009, 2010, 2011, or 2013, that 0 line was a different percentage point each one of those years. So one year it was 60 or 50 something percent, and then another year it was 63%. But that all got marked in that 0 line because that was the white graduation rate at that time, which is why we could see for example, under Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, there's still a gap of 15 percentage points, but there was less of a gap in the 2010-11 year.
Right.
Because that 0 line is
Yes.
actually a changing number,
Yes.
depending on the year.
Right. That is correct. So one of the embedded pieces of data about that line is that it reflects a single data point that has increased over time.
Right.
So that is true. And
Which gets back to our milestone goal of increasing graduation rates for all students and making sure that we're closing those
Yeah.
gaps.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So another way we wanted to graphically represent the how different groups of students do in our cohort rate was to show who starts in our system and how they do, and who arrives later and how they do, and what that tells us about what to do to dramatically improve our graduation rate. Sarah, would you like to?
Yeah,
talk
sure.
about this?
So if we take a look, for example, at that yellow circle up there, or yellow oval, 2,804 students entered in this 9th grade cohort and remained throughout. However, if you look at the kind of gray box or oval over there, we had 954 students who entered in grade 9, the 9th grade cohort, and then they transferred. And we don't know where they transferred to necessarily. They could have transferred to another district, they could have transferred to another country. So that's 954 students.
But outside PPS.
Outside of PPS. And then we have another group of students represented on the left-hand side of students who entered PPS, the PPS system, after 9th grade. So that means they entered in 10th or 11th or 12th grade. And there's 620 of those, so almost 18% of our graduating cohort.
Sarah, can I
Yeah.
just double check? When you say entered after grade 9, are you meaning grade 9 as defined by credits or by grade level or
By
age?
year.
By year, okay.
Yes. So
So it's not
they
credit
entered our system.
They came newly to PPS after 9th grade. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
That was a-
Correct.
Okay, whether it was from Beaverton or another country. Maybe Beaverton is another
Right.
country.
No.
Right.
Just
But
kidding.
to Greg's point, so this is the class of 2013, so it means they entered after 2009, which should have been their freshman year. So regardless of how many credits they had. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, just a few other interesting facts about that 620 number. So 42% of those students, so 263 of them, never enrolled in an accountable PPS comprehensive or focused school during their high school careers. So that means that they went right to a contracted-based community alternative program, or they sought a GED through Portland Community College, or they received educational services through DART, which is a PPS program providing mental health services. 263. 263. Yeah.
So what you see here is a really, really important trend to note. So students who entered Portland Public Schools in grade 9 and remained, their graduation rate is considerably higher than our 67%. It's 74%. And students who entered after 9th grade, if you look at them just as a cohort, their graduation rate is only 35%.
Regardless of which, I mean, that's across all possible high school options.
Right,
Okay.
across all options, across all races and ethnicities,
Right.
across gender, et cetera. So, so this is really valuable data for us, and it continues to confirm prior studies about our cohort rates and who succeeds here. So students who have been in PPS and stay in PPS do well in PPS, and so so it really helps us understand further retooling is needed to really provide the rooting compound for students who get to our system later to really grow and succeed here.
And I would be cautious about saying that students who start here and remain here are doing well, because we're still only talking about a 74% graduation rate.
Right,
So
and
we
we're
obviously want that to be
We definitely
90
do.
to 100%.
And we're still talking about those racial gaps.
But it's
Yes.
relative. Yeah.
Okay, so some highlights of what we see, the 4th consecutive year of graduation rate gains for Portland Public Schools. The graduation gap between white and Hispanic students has been halved from 30 percentage points to 15 points. Still too big, but our really, really clear work happening there. Benson, Franklin, Jefferson, and Roosevelt, Hispanic students graduate at the same rate or better than white students. So we absolutely know it can be done, so it must be done. And we're really, really proud of the work in these schools and all the community partners and teacher devotion that contributes to these rates really significantly changing.
I want to give that
Another highlight, Jefferson Middle College program, Franklin, and Roosevelt all posted significant gains and have for 3 consecutive years. So again, we just see really strong trending in these 3 schools. And again, very exciting. These schools have very high concentrations of students in poverty, higher concentrations than our other schools of students of color. And so we know that the work that we're doing around intentional, culturally responsive curriculum and instruction, the work that we continue to do to equip our staff and school communities with an ability to navigate what does it mean to have a racial achievement gap, and how is that an opportunity gap, and what are we doing to close that? So we're really, really celebrating the work happening in these schools. Our areas of concern are also really clear. Our high school system struggles to serve mobile students. We've got a lot of them. Another is that our African American graduation rate, as we previously noted, at 53%, is too low and has been nearly stagnant for the past 3 years. And we know that that is unacceptable and has to change. Our American Indian, Native American graduation rate is also too low at 44%, but has improved from 29%, but absolutely not satisfied with where we are for this cohort of students. So we'd be happy to take any other clarifying questions from you at this time. And again, I know that there are many more data points that we could review if you'd like.
Director Buell?
There are two things. We're really starting to do some nice work in our high schools, and that's wonderful. I really like it. But it seems to me like a lot of my experience shows that the middle school is where kids start to drop out, those middle grades. We got that 20%, they're tough. And a lot of that takes place in the middle grades. And I don't see us doing much there, either straightening out the K-8 situations that we have, or getting engaging activities and things into our schools. I think it'd be great if we would look at that coming up in the budget. The second thing that I have is, we had a conversation about 450 hours of intense English instruction for our limited English proficiency kids, which are going out at 51%. Has anything come out of that? Have we done any thinking about that, or done any research, or looked at all on what we're doing? I know we're fudging a little bit at the top when we get towards the end. Teachers tell me that. We fudge the passing kids off who aren't really ready, particularly English, kids with limited English proficiency, or ESL kids. We fudge a little at the top, and so it looks even better than it actually is. They're not ready to get out of there, and one of the reasons it appears to me they're not is because we haven't done the real background that we need to do working on their language. Not everybody agrees with that, but I think there's a lot to that, and I'd love to see us begin to actually look at that. It's an issue that I raised with you, and I haven't gotten anything back on it, but for what that's worth, I think it's worth us taking a really good, solid look. Thank you.
I would not concur with your analysis that people are fudging about the grades and therefore the diplomas of our ESL students. So I would beg to differ.
I wouldn't say they're all fudging, but there's plenty of people out there fudging.
I think the integrity of our teachers is well known, and so I'm surprised by the analysis.
I like the integrity of those teachers who are fudging. They're fudging for a good reason often, which is because we didn't do the job on the kids and they're helping them move out. So that's a good deal, but there's fudging going on, absolutely.
Director Morton?
Thank you. I'm actually not very comfortable with that accusation either. I think that being said, there's absolutely more, and you referred to this, absolutely more that we need to be doing, particularly for our English language learners. And we shouldn't be satisfied with where we're at with that, and I don't think we are. I think that's pretty clear. A couple of things that I did want to mention, and you, Director Buell, brought up the middle years, and I think he's absolutely right. My experience has been sort of the lost group are those kids that actually find themselves pretty disconnected from school very early prior to coming into ninth grade. I think these are students who maybe have found their way through a system that hasn't been relevant to them. And in fact, a while ago I participated in some community visioning, and one of the stories that really struck me at the time were parents of first graders who made the comment that their children hated school. And so when I think about a kid, my son, being in school from kindergarten or first grade through 5th, 6th, 7th, already the majority of their lives had been spent just not connecting to school, just not enjoying it, just not being a part of it, and not being a part of something that's relevant to them and makes sense to them. So I think the mantra for me has been earlier is better. How do we engage? And a part of our milestone framework addresses this specifically, but I think there's also more that we need to consider as we enter into budget conversation. The other piece too is that thinking back to our achievement compact and what we have said that we would do and what has been recommended to us by the Achievement Compact Committee, we really need to be taking a look at the expectations, particularly around the disaggregated ethnic groups, and how we're targeting our investments, how we're working specifically with those groups, with schools to engage those students, to increase the achievement in those. You pull out a couple of the graduation rates that have been either stagnant or relatively stagnant, and I think that's important for us to look at again. And I'm speaking to staff because we'll be asking you for your expertise, but also the board as we look at what is really going to move the dial from 67% to the next leap. The very last thing for me, and I apologize for dominating this, but the very last thing I think is how we, I'll talk about the budget piece later, but I think it really does play a significant role, and a lot has been made recently, I think, about where do we invest our dollars, particularly dollars that we hear about in the news today, or we found talked about in adding to schools in October. How do we invest those particular dollars where we create a balance around our schools that includes instructional staff, but also includes support staff that is so critical, particularly for those disaggregated groups. So.
And I think under our next agenda item, college and career readiness, we'll be talking about budget and what we do in our high schools. So you're going to have a chance here in just a couple minutes. So, Director Blau?
And just to follow up, what Director Morton was going to say, and as Director Knowles just pointed out, maybe we're getting to this in our conversations. I know we're looking at the career readiness. We're looking at a couple of these high school action team things in a piece, but I guess I'm really curious. I mean, if we have stagnant African American population graduation rates, but we're seeing improvement in Latino, I'm really curious to understand what's working, what's not working, and how do we reinvest in the programs that are working, or what research do we need to go out, and I know you guys are working hard on this, what research do we need to do to make sure that we begin to see that movement? Because those are students' lives that, will that be coming up in future presentations, or is that for tonight?
Yes. Yeah, not tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Not specifically, although as we look forward into sort of what are the recommendations from the high school action team as they relate to system improvement overall, all of these pieces come up. Certainly, Director Buell's reference to you don't fix high schools at high school, so you don't, so that absolutely is true, and we know that we absolutely have to nourish every element of the system. And so it takes investments across the whole system to really alter the outcomes that we're getting. And so we do have recommendations coming to you throughout the budget process.
Will there be specific suggestions or recommendations to target specific populations? Or will it just be general, saying we need to do more of this? Because
Both.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And you are going to
I think it's more about how
doing
how
a
we
high school
like it.
action team info tonight
Yes.
as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, it wasn't called out separately on the agenda, so.
Dr. Regan?
So I wanted to address one thing that Director Buell said, and then I have a question for you. One is the emerging bilingual students, and I think one of the strategies that we've been looking at, which I know you're very supportive of, is the language immersion programs that we're introducing across the district. So that, to me, I think is one of our huge strategies to support these students. So I continue to be really curious about the disparity in achievement between our boys and girls. And it looks like it's about a 6% disparity, but I know that we've seen, for example, when we look at our valedictorians every May as they come and present here, it feels like we're seeing more and more girls rather than boys. When you start looking at college enrollment, it seems like it's, you know, more of a 60% girls, 40% boys. So one of the things I was curious about in this information is whether or not we could potentially break down or disaggregate the data by ethnicity and gender. Because I'm curious on the African American graduation rate or student achievement rates. Are we seeing a huge swing there between how the boys are doing versus how the girls are doing? With our Hispanic kids, are we seeing that? With our white kids, are we seeing that? I'm just kind of curious if it would be another tidbit of information that might help us target strategies a little bit more appropriately.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's something there or not, but I'd like to see that data.
We will get that to you. And we certainly have done analytics around this. We do know that a number of factors impact particularly boys of color, and leaving more impediments for them, higher demands from families for work outside the home during the high school years, more targeting from law enforcement and therefore interruption in schooling, a number of factors. And so so our strategies as we go forward from the high school action team do look to address those as well. So both what are the incentives that we want to put into place around the desirability of college and career readiness, and then what are the conditions under which students can get to school and succeed in school. So those are sort of the two big pieces of that.
Director Moore.
Oh, thank you. I'm kind of a slow and steady wins the race kind of guy, and I think there is a lot of this that I would love to see massive jumps within graduation. I think that whenever I see that, though, changes, regardless if it's in education or something else, there's always something that is associated with that, either a drop in numbers or an increase in numbers or a recategorization of something. So I think keeping on a steady path towards something is really important. In fact, when these numbers came out, I asked a staff member from All Hands Raised and some others from the state, what's the rate that we should be shooting for? Because I think until we reach sort of the high 80s, 90s, it's always going to be, well, it's not fast enough. And then, as you described, it gets into different dynamics and different issues that we have to work with in maintaining those higher graduation levels. And really, what I got back was it depends. And I think there's nothing is ever, until we get there, nothing is ever going to really be satisfying. But I think saying that, we have to understand the amount of work, the amount of effort that has gone into bumping up these graduation rates consistently since 2008, 2009, the work that was involved in the high school redesign, the work that teachers, the work that administrators, the work that boards have gone through to create a system that allows for that kind of change, systemic change, over 48,000 kids. That is significant work. And I want to, personally, I want to professionally applaud the staff who has been a part of that, and the students and the families who have contributed to that, because that is, it's a phenomenal change. I think we talk about how easy it is, particularly with low numbers, to move, bump things here and there. But with so many students over so many years, it is a very difficult thing to just simply retain, but also to build. And it also comes down to leadership within the organization. Thank you, Carol, and also executive staff who have been a part of driving this, even though it hasn't always been the most popular thing. So I wanted to make that statement. So much more to do, but let's face it, this is pretty significant when you look at the trend since 2008-9.
Oh, man, well said.
I agree. Thank you. I agree with that, yeah. So, anybody else? Okay, I just had one quick question, and you talked a lot about Benson, Franklin, Roosevelt, Jefferson, and the great gains they have made. I know they have a lot further to go, and closing their achievement gap I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm just curious what happens at Lincoln, Cleveland, and Grant, because we didn't hear about any of those. And I remember I hear Director Gonzalez in my head talking about Grant over and over and over again. So I'm curious what's going on there, and not that I have to have that right now, but would love to hear from you guys what's going on at those other schools. They all have significant populations of students of color, and I'd like to know what's going on there too.
Yes, and so Grant High School's
they fall through the
overall
cracks
rate
easier
went up
there.
2 percentage points, and big picture, we continue to see growth there.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you guys could just provide those, I'd be most
Yes.
appreciative. Okay.
I think it was not the gap, the closing that we saw last year in some of our comprehensive schools in terms of the racial achievement gap.
The achievement gap, I
But then we
remember that
But
about
it's not
last
quite
year.
as good this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so,
where it opened up again.
so we need to keep the spotlight on that.
And Director Knowles, I also was hoping that we could get more information on what's happening at MLC, which had a pretty dramatic drop in graduation rates. And I know that
Thank
that's
you.
a
I
really,
saw that.
really small cohort. And maybe that's part of the explanation, but that one certainly raised some huge concerns.
So I'm going to say our high school principals have taken their own data, and many of them are going through student by student to analyze what the situation is, because some of these are, when you have a small number, if you had a significant number of students who went for GED, so people are really diving in and trying to understand student by student, what do their rates mean.
When you only have 30 students to start with,
Yeah.
even a small number can make a big difference.
And you have 5 of those who get a GED, you're in or go for a 5-year plan rather than a 4-year plan. You have to understand the specific situation of each kid, which is what they're doing.
I agree, and at the same time,
And we
can
MLC
find out.
used to be one of those schools where we saw off-the-charts graduation rates, so
Absolutely.
We can come back to you with more
Yeah, we
stories
need to
there.
pay attention.
Absolutely. Well, even in 2009-10, they were at 83%, and now they're at 58, so that's a big jump, so. Any other questions or comments? Nobody? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys both being here, and thank you for, I think, really good news. We have to be cautious about it because we still want to see more, but thank you very much, and thank
I'm
you
gonna
to
ask you to stay put, 'cause I'm
staff
gonna
and to
introduce-
Carol for the hard work that's gone into making these numbers possible.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I know they are.
okay. good.
So the next item is up. I know you're still on, I'm sorry.
Sounded like you had to go.
Oh, darn, he almost got out. So our next agenda item is the some information we're going to get about for 2013-14 budget, college and career readiness. Superintendent Smith,
Yeah,
would you like
thank
to
you.
introduce our guests?
I would, and mostly to provide a context, which actually emerged a lot through the discussion on graduation rates. But as we've referenced a number of times, the board and staff embarked on this high school system design a number of years ago that were that was largely structural, defining a program, trying to get balanced enrollment across our schools, but also did some significant things like schools that had, like Roosevelt and Madison, that had been operating as small schools, reunited as being a single campus. Jefferson became a middle college. I mean, we ended up doing some really significant changes that I would say you set metrics, and we came back and looked at it about a year ago at what were the metrics, and we are at that point meeting all of the metrics we had set, meeting or exceeding all of the metrics we'd set. At the beginning of this year, we convened what we call the high school action team, and people applied to be members of this team. And what we really did was ask them to come together and look at what are the successes we're getting in our own system, what are the questions we have, how do you go deep and understand the data, and how do we start looking at the strategies that accelerate achievement for our high school students, that accelerate our graduation gains. But it was really looking at strategies that are working either in our system or in other systems. And what we asked them to do, and this was convened by the CAO, Sue Ann and Sarah Singer. They've worked diligently with this team since the fall, and we asked them to come back to us with budget recommendations. So part of why I want to say this much is this has been a desire of this board for a while, to say what's working in our own system and how do we fund those things, how do we accelerate those things, and how do we have the work that we are doing inform the budget process once we are making investments and trying to understand what we invest in. So we're at a really great moment of having had a team that is a broad-based team of community members working with our staff, looking at our own data, having board members actually attending those sessions and working with the community, and then coming back and saying, here are the things that we want to inform our budget. So I'm really pleased to be at this stage with this. And I want to thank the folks who have served on this committee, because it's been a lot of really hard work putting together what you're going to see tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. But it's also like the context of really foundational work, a lot of hard work on the part of board members, both current and previous, and really diving deep to understand our system and do systemic change. So, Sue Ann and Sarah.
All right. Well, as the superintendent said, we have really three unique chunks of work going on to look at how do we improve our graduation rates and the system overall. So one of those is the high school action team. So just over a year ago this month, you received an over 100-page high school system design report. So it was our look back at the first full year of having implemented the changes in high school system design, many of which Superintendent Smith referred to. And out of that grew okay, now what? The work isn't done, so we have done important work to create the conditions to improve things in high school, but what is the real culture and support within schools that we need in order to really dramatically continue to see improvement? So we have three areas where that's going on. So we commissioned the high school action team last spring. Second to that, you also commissioned your own report on high school graduation rates and got an audit report last spring. Also last spring, the Parents Coalition, a group of parents of high schoolers, engaged with us and offered to provide additional support and partnership with us related to looking at how do we improve particularly the work connecting students to college and career readiness. And then finally, we've had ongoing partnership with a group of industry partners and have continued to be engaged with them around college and career readiness, CTE elements, as well as others. So we want to just give you a sense of all of those. A really fast report. Okay. So the high school action team purpose is to develop recommendations to accelerate student achievement and graduation success within the framework of the high school system design. We have a multi-stakeholder advisory group, and our recommendations are to focus on making systemic changes to reduce barriers to post-secondary success for all students, but particularly students of color, as previously noted, because of our opportunity gaps that have become achievement gaps. And this is where the work is also really rooted in the Achievement Compact work and expectations by 2025. So I would just like to defer to Director Davidson, who is a member of the High School Action Team, and also who could just speak to what the membership of the High School Action Team is and what your sense of that is.
Yeah, so I thought the membership on the team was actually really great, and the level of discussion that went into all the, the different aspects of everything was fantastic. I mean, I found myself constantly through meetings sitting there, and someone would bring something up from a perspective that I never even, would have remotely thought of, and it was just fantastic. I thought the presentations throughout the process were very thought out. Staff did a fantastic job preparing things and, leading us on the right path to get where we needed to go, so it was great.
Thank you. So students, teachers, administrators, partner organization leaders, Portland Community College, Portland Workforce Alliance, parents, work systems, all hands raised, and district staff. So we've really got a broad base here. And I want to particularly call out the work of the 3 high school teachers on the High School Action Team, Samantha Cassell, Jerry Eaton, and Susie Bartley, all of whom are really masterful classroom practitioners and who really just brought a lot of dimension to our conversations. So they've really been an asset as well. So after a couple of months of reviewing data, way heavier load than you saw this evening, but looking at all, like the whole PPS system data, looking at high schools as a subset of our whole system data, and prior reports going back to the 2007 Mary Beth Celio report on high schools, all the way through the high school graduation rate audit from this past summer. And from that, we commissioned a set of 5 subcommittees. And so these are the focus areas of those committees. So the first was increasing attendance. And we certainly know that our state is now taking a really, really critical look at the role of attendance in success in school. And so we had already commissioned this committee, and they did really important work looking at the critical nature of you learn more when you are at school. So the next was developing robust mentoring programs. The third was boosting 9th grade student outcomes. In our system, every report shows us that students who are on track at the end of 9th grade, it's very hard to knock them off track later. So the work to really make certain that 9th graders are engaged and succeeding is critical. Ensuring that all students graduate with a college and career readiness plan, emphasis on plan, and finally aligning high school services to student needs. So this is the role of our comprehensives, our focus schools, our in-district alternatives, and our partner alternative schools. So how do we make certain that we've got the right supports in the right places for the right students at the right time? And so Sarah, would you like to speak to this?
Actually, I think you covered most of this, but as a group, we just started with reviewing our data, getting everyone at a kind of a baseline understanding. If you could, and I'll talk more. So some of the research that the individual subcommittees conducted, I'll just name some of it, not all of it, but we did visits and interviews. So we looked at the Hillsborough model. They have a care team model at Century High School. We went to Alliance at Meek, Alliance at Benson, the Reconnection Center. We did site visits at Franklin, at Benson, Grant, and Madison. We interviewed a group of students at Mount Scott Learning Center. We did a focus group and surveys to students about attendance, and we did a lot of the kind of the literature review on these subcommittees.
So the committees did their research, analysis, and then reported back to us, and then also gave us tiered recommendations in terms of resource investment. So, and the exciting thing really was how aligned all those reports were. So we had 5 different committees looking at sort of 5 different elements, and yet what we got back were really 2 big buckets of what will impact our system going forward. And so those are, the first is to design a system that prepares students for college and career readiness as the goal, rather than the diploma as the goal. So that the diploma is a critical gate on the way somewhere else important in your life. And the second is to implement an early response system that really sounds the alarm sooner for students who are at risk, and then provides the needed supports and interventions so that those students stay on track and continue to succeed in high school and beyond. So we've got those two big buckets. And so the first is to design a system that prepares students for college and career.
Okay, so one of the things that we know from national research and local research through organizations like Work Systems is that without a in this day and age, you really do need some type of post-secondary credential or degree. And there's a lot of research around what happens if you don't. Your unemployment rate is going to be higher. Your lifetime earnings will be significantly higher.
Lower.
I'm sorry, lower. Lower. And there's a whole host of other indicators, even around health and a whole bunch of other things that I won't go into, but it really is, a high school diploma is kind of a necessary step along the way, but getting to post-secondary readiness is the goal.
So another analysis that came from all the committees was really that quality instruction is the foundation of success for college and career readiness and success. So these were several elements that came through all the research, interviews with students, interviews in our own programs around our own successes. So, and these are really, I think, powerful teachers and align well with the work that we're doing. So one is high expectations and high support. Another is personalization, teacher collaboration, data-influenced decision-making. So really looking at how are kids doing with a team of teachers, and then adjusting, culturally and linguistically responsive practices, and finally rigorous and relevant learning. We also see that there are three really important elements that prepare all students for college and career readiness. They are academic preparedness, so how are you doing with your skills? College and career knowledge, so what kind of exposure do you have? And finally, tenacity. So what is that persistence habit that keeps kids moving and prevents them from being bumped when life doesn't necessarily easily carry them forward?
Okay, so we took this is a quick summary of our existing challenges as it relates to our college and career readiness system at PPS. So at the district level, the first question you have to be able to answer is how do we know if our students are college and career ready? What measurements are we using? How do we track that? So there's still some, I think, some work to do in that regard. There's also the aligning our efforts to the 40-40-20, so or the OEIB's goal to have 40% of students graduate, 40% of students graduate from high school, 40% of students graduate from, post-secondary 4-year degree, 40% with a post-secondary credential apprenticeship type, and 20% with high school diploma, and 100% graduating from high school, okay? So then at the school level, what we find is that when it comes to college and career readiness, we know that there are some schools where there's better access than in others. And sometimes even within a school, it's a matter of fortune or good luck if a student encounters a really strong, for example, teacher who can prepare students for college and career. So that you have both inconsistency across schools and even within schools. And then at the student level, there are certain activities, certain college and career readiness knowledge that really doesn't exist presently in a set of courses. And so for example, in many other places around the country, they'll actually have sort of a class in 9th grade and maybe a class in 11th grade or 12th grade that that prepares students for college and career. Like you plan for goals, your goal setting. You might work on college essays. You might do your resume in those classes. You might work on technological literacy. So just having a place, a consistent place where those kinds of activities can occur is inconsistent in our our current system. And just in general, and we know we've talked a lot about this in the past, but just more opportunities needed for career preparation and career exploration. So this is the CTE conversation that we've had for a while. And then really, we want students to graduate with sort of a beyond high school plan. What's your next steps? Every student should graduate with that. And I think right now, again, that's happening inconsistently.
So our college and career readiness recommendations came through looking like these elements. So a standardized yearly guidance plan and curriculum, career preparation available in every school, identifying college and career readiness integration points within existing curriculum. In other words, what are we already doing in courses at all grade levels, and how do we enrich those so that kids are really thinking about post-secondary application and connection of what they're doing. So this is the relevance piece. And other essential college and career knowledge built into a potential new course or a new structure for kids. Next is replication of acceleration strategies that are already happening in some of our schools. So this is where we'd be looking at, we see the assets of dual credit in Jefferson High School, but also many of our other schools. We have IB in a couple of schools. We're considering adding that at Madison High School. And advanced placement work, the Advanced Scholars Program that utilizes a really unique teacher mentorship program to support students in a cohort doing advanced placement with no barriers about who can participate. So those elements of programs we want to look at replicating. And then finally, a basic infrastructure in the district to support college and career readiness. And this is sort of above and beyond what we have, or building on what we have in terms of college and career coordinators in our high schools, the college and career centers. So, so it would really be building on those with dedicated equipment and space. So, and I just want to pause there. Are there any questions about this element, the college and career readiness element of the high school action team recommendations? And we will have, so we will go on, but I just wondered if there's anything yet you'd like me to clarify before we move forward.
Yes, I have a question. Well, I go down a lot to the OEIB meetings, and they always talk about college and career readiness. And I understand what college readiness is.
Yes.
I mean, I could write you a program for a kid to be college ready. How are we defining career readiness? Now, I know we're working on the CTE stuff, working hard trying to get some of that CTE, so that's an aspect of it. But how do we define career readiness? If someone's going to be a hairdresser, or someone's going to be somebody who works in construction, or somebody, I mean, that's kind of, is that career readiness? Well, what are we doing for career readiness? And how are we defining that?
Okay, there's a couple of points there. In terms of the career readiness that we're looking for, we're aligning that to high wage, high demand careers. High wage, high demand careers.
Right.
So, and some of the high demand careers in the local area are in IT, healthcare, and manufacturing. Although, you know, there's other obvious other choices as well. In terms of college and career academic preparedness, there is a lot of research that suggests that for the jobs now and in the future, you really do need a lot of the same skills to be successful in these high wage, high demand careers as you would in college. So some of these cognitive skills are largely the same. However, the other things I would mention is around career readiness. When we talk to our industry partners, almost every industry partner will say, what I want students to graduate with are some of these what I call softer skills, like can you collaborate with others? Are you a team player? Some of it's like, can you show up on time? Can you, that kind of thing. Those those are like the number one thing that I hear from our industry partners about what they want.
Do we have classes then in that? In other words, do we have a section of a class that teaches those soft skills?
I think that's what I was saying before, is that it's inconsistent across our schools, and that's exactly what this recommendation is about for the high school action team, is that's what we need to have that across the system, not in one place in a school. That's the recommendation.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick comment.
Director Martin?
I think I looked ahead, so you might be
What?
covering this, sorry. But I think one of the things that we want to consider as we do this in our move forward in this, I think, is how we partner, particularly with our community-based partners who have in place already college and career centers, have already in place relationships with employers. And how do we use these centers as a way to leverage what we're doing in the high schools or what we're doing across our system to really accelerate that work, that particularly around career readiness. But there's a great number of students who in our system who are first generation college students who just have not seen or even thought about college. So I want to at least put that out there as something that I'd love to explore a little bit further as we move forward.
Thank you.
So kind of a process question. I know it probably won't be tonight, but just in terms of, I'm assuming there are going to be specific budget asks or recommendations or trade-offs or options connected with all of these recommendations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be coming through as we move into our budget process.
Yes, so we'll do a
Okay.
high level of that without any sort of dollars or anything
Right,
tonight
okay.
for you.
But you
and
guys
then-
looked at
Yes.
what would it take, what would the investment be, maybe at
That's
different
correct.
levels of minimal to optimal and so forth.
Yes.
So I'm excited to see that coming. And again, just to highlight that although it's fabulous and long weighted, that we have some reinvestment and some uptick in property tax returns and all those pieces, it's not going to be enough money to pay for everything we want to do. And obviously there's lots of interest in spending the monies in all kinds of different ways. So I guess the sooner we can start figuring out what those trade-offs are going to be and where are the most effective investments we can make, the better. So just going to highlight that I'm looking forward to the discussion. At least we're looking at where do we try to leverage the investment we can versus where do we cut.
Thank you. Okay, our second recommendation, so the second, excuse me, I'm so sorry, Director Curler, sorry.
Thank you. I guess my question has to do with implementation. And so there's the variety of very good recommendations.
Thank you.
How do we make sure that they get implemented in a way that works? And who's responsible for this?
So I think that there are a few different layers for answering your questions. So who's responsible? So I'm responsible for making sure that this just isn't another set of great ideas.
Right.
And so, so the superintendent, has clearly directed that we want to impact the system. She wanted this multi-stakeholder, broad-based group to then bring forward recommendations. Some of the recommendations require new investments. Not all of them do. Some of them require us really understanding our pockets of excellence and then looking at what are the conditions in other schools that are similar to those, or how do we have teachers teaching one another about what's working in our schools. So there are a variety of ways. So our Director of High Schools, Trip Goodall, and I will continue to have the duct tape to this to move it forward.
Okay.
So, and again, as we move forward, we're just a few slides away from sort of talking about what we think the recommendations will look like, what some possible ways of packaging the tools that we would look for in terms of new investments as well.
Okay, thank you. That's
Does that help?
helpful.
Okay. All right. So the second major recommendation that came from multiple committees is around implementing an early response system. Now, as you probably know, we already have an academic priority system or a form of early warning system. And so this really works on elaborating that so that we go from just having the information about which students are challenged and in which ways with attendance, with academics, or school behavior, and shifts that so that we really, really are strategic about who gets which supports and when. So the goal here is to support students remaining in their local middle and high schools. And again, this is one of the many places that the work of the high school action team clearly could not be contained to what happens in high schools. So everything from the attendance initiatives, very hard to fix poor attendance patterns at the high school. Not impossible, but we absolutely know that kindergarten attendance impacts high school attendance. And so how are we working on the whole system to improve our graduation outcomes? So we also believe that we can, with more strategic early responses, potentially decrease the need for alternative options for our students, particularly those who are younger, 9th and 10th graders, and kids who are otherwise on track to not get bumped off track. And finally, we want to maintain appropriate capacity in those support system schools for students who are dropped out or who are highly at risk, need specialized support, etc. So,
okay, so some of the components of an early response system is having a set of indicators that allow you to know if a student is on track or not on track. And one of the key components, and slight differences again, so we know we have academic priority, but there's also probably a need for indicators that demonstrate whether you're ready or you're on track for post-secondary readiness. And so you might have a different set of indicators in that case. So we would need to know, we need to develop those as time goes on. There's also a need to know, we need to have a set of interventions that we use and then be able to prioritize those interventions. Some interventions are going to be better for some kids. Some interventions, quite frankly, are more costly, so we want to be more strategic about how we direct those. We also want consistency of interventions and supports across the district as well as the cluster. Personalization is a key piece here. So one of the things we mentioned in our grad rate discussion was mobility. And we think that one of the ways to really address our improving our outcomes with our highly mobile populations is by personalizing their experience, by literally sitting down, knowing the name of that kid, and then figuring out what intervention makes sense for that student. And that's, we think, is the best way to improve our outcomes for our highly mobile population. We also know that it's not just one support. It's going to be a wide variety of supports. Every kid's going to have a different need. So some of the things that the high school action team talked about were things like family therapists, mental health supports, access to SROs, and culturally appropriate interventions as well. And then alignment between middle school and high school is key. So those transition points, we know, between the 8th and 9th grade is a key transition point. So we really want to make sure that we're highly aligned across our system. And then lastly, something that we need to spend, I think, more focus on is really evaluating which interventions work. So we know that one of our subcommittees researched mentoring, and we have, I don't remember what she said, but it was something like 60 different mentoring programs. And at some point, you just have to figure out, well, which mentoring programs are most effective for students, for which students, and how do we know? And so we really want to spend some time on evaluation. So the other key part of the early response system is that it's multi-layered, so every part of the system has a role. So you're working at the center with the student and their family. Right outside of that, directly, is the school improvement team. So this can be comprised, and it's going to look different probably in different schools, but you'll have a school counselor, a school psychologist, the administrator, perhaps a coach, an SMS. So these are largely people who are within the school already. If you move to the next layer, school-based partners, these are our critical partners who play a role. So think of Step Up, SEI, SUN, those types of players have a critical role to play in this. And then lastly, we have sort of at the cluster level, we have other jurisdictions, especially when we get to sort of our students who really need a lot of support and intensive support. We have to work with organizations like DHS, like Juvenile Justice, and that type of thing. So this is a multi-layered approach, and it's really personnel are going to be needed at the school level, at the cluster level, at the district level, and then ultimately even the county level, because this is an issue that's not just important to PPS.
Dr. Buell, do you have a question?
Yes. On the school improvement team,
Mm-hmm.
the people there are, we might want to add a counselor or something that we don't have. Is that what you're saying when we're adding staff?
Oh.
This is high school, right? Or
Right.
is this isn't for middle school or anything? You know, there's a high school, there's a high school
So this graphic is for high school.
only?
That was
and
its
there's
intent.
all schools are going to have these teams next year?
So
that
this
the
is
plan?
the recommendation is that we move to an early response system.
And
we-
all schools would have this? Is that they're going?
that would be the ideal, but I think
Is that
that's
the
going to largely
recommendation?
depend upon budget.
But is that the recommendation?
So would you allow us to get to the recommendation so we're just,
Well, I have other questions on this, and
Okay.
I'm kind of based on whether or not that's the recommendation or not.
so the recommendation is not that there's a standard one-size-fits-all that's going to work or make every school better. So what we do want to look at, though, are what do we think are common elements? But we also want to really apply our equity lens and look at where do we want to be most strategic about our investments, which kinds of resources are working, and how do we add to those? So
So the answer to my question is no, we don't have all the schools that we're aiming at as a recommendation to have a school improvement team?
So
the
every
answer?
school, for instance, we would want to have a school improvement team, but it wouldn't
might look
always
different.
look like this.
It might look different.
Correct.
How many kids would we suggest that school improvement team would deal with? I think they were doing in Forest Grove with their school improvement team 75 a year. Is that what we're looking at? Are we looking at 100? Are we looking at 25? Do we have any idea? I'm just trying to
We
get
have
some
not been thinking about
specifics.
this in terms of a number of students, no. So
But so you haven't been thinking about how many kids it might involve? I mean,
Why don't we
this,
continue that?
why don't you let me ask the question? How about that, Ruth? If you don't mind, I'd love to
Director
ask the
Buell,
question.
I think that if they got a little further in the presentation, some of your questions might be answered. Why don't we just wait till they
Okay,
get
I don't
to-
mind. Can I come back to
get
this?
to the recommendation? Absolutely. You
Okay,
can come
fine.
back to
That's
whatever
not a
you'd
problem.
like, but let's
Okay.
let them get a little bit
Sure,
further
I
through
don't,
this.
that's no problem. However you want to do it's great with me,
Thank you.
as long as I can come back.
You bet.
okay, so we know, for instance, that schools who have step-up after-school tutoring may not also have support from SEI. So those are two different organizations that provide really focused, targeted mentorship and support, and they're utilized slightly differently in the community. So we don't see this as a prescription for what everybody would have, but elements of what it would be. Sorry, I don't know what that's Help. Okay. All right. So we want to talk through just very quickly what we think that the intervention process recommended would look like.
Sure. So this is simplified, but it's just sort of the basic concept. So in an intervention process, the first question you're asking yourself is this student on track for graduation? Are they on track for post-secondary? And they might be on track, they might be slightly off track, or they might be significantly off track. So that's the first question you ask yourself using a set of indicators. The second thing you do is, if they are on track, you continue to monitor. If they are not on track, then that's where you do some deep analysis you're determining why the student is not track. What's the root cause? And this is where the personalization piece becomes critical. Then you identify supports for the student. You have a host of interventions in your school that are available to you. And then you move to providing support to the student. You deliver that intervention. So you might have, we lost our screen there.
We have it here. So.
Okay, so carry on?
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
I will carry on.
Do you have
And they'll get it back.
I have it, yeah, it's fine. So we'll, right there, yeah. Okay, so we provide the support to students through delivery of that intervention, or in some cases interventions, right? And then lastly, the next step is you evaluate, did this work? And so this is a cyclical process that you're doing every student by name.
And this is happening somewhat already, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And I think where we find differences, you know, in some schools they have the academic priority designation. They're doing some of this, but they don't necessarily, they're not necessarily a resource to provide all the necessary interventions. So that might be their hang up. Different schools are in different places with this.
Okay. So our next slide really just looks at, so we have a tier of interventions. I'm sorry for those of you who are here who cannot see. So really just looking at, tiering what you do for the students who are most on track, for those who need some support, and for those who need intensive support. So from there, we want to just share with you more about our partnership with the Diploma Plus College and Career team of parents.
Okay, so the Diploma Plus College and Career is another point of collaboration for PPS. We're collaborating with a group of parents, they're known as the Parent Coalition, to design college readiness and a career-focused system, as well as an implementation plan. The goal is to provide common supports, resources, and tools for all of our PPS high school, for our PPS high schools, as well as creating the systemic infrastructure at the district office level. So our work to date so far has been, we have built snapshots of current college readiness and career focused supports at each high school. And this is a special thanks to the parents who've gone to every single one of our high schools and interviewed the counselors and the career coordinators. They've written up a document, had the career coordinators, the counselors, and the administrators review those documents to make sure that they're accurate. And so we have these sort of snapshots of every single one of our high schools. We also are beginning and have made significant progress on researching and creating best practices around model systems around the country. So who's really doing the college and career readiness well from a systemic perspective. So we're getting lists of kind of a snapshot of each of those systems as well. And so that's the work that we've done to date.
And it's a very exciting partnership for us insofar as it's just given us additional lift and opportunity to do work in terms of the analysis, and we're really pleased to have this partnership.
All right, so the next exciting news is around a grant that we were awarded from the Nike School Innovation Fund. This grant was awarded to Portland, Beaverton, and Hillsborough school districts, and this grant will help us in completing the college and career readiness work. So we're excited about that. It's a $260,000 grant. $10,000 per high school goes to for foundational college and career materials to directly support students. So a large chunk of this is going to go right on the ground, which we're excited about. We're also creating a system framework so that students in every high school have access to the foundational level of supports that they need. And this grant will help support improved communication to students and their families about what it really means to be post-secondary ready and the process for how to navigate post-secondary options. So something really small right now that we're working on, but is in need, is just an updated website that actually lists like how do you navigate the college scene, like how do you navigate getting a high-wage career right out of college. And so that's just like one quick win right now that we're doing with the support of this grant. And then lastly, we've met with, and I know some of you were part of this, we've met with some of our industry partners around career technical education, around career preparation and career learning. There was over 40 industry partners. It was a meeting, I think it was on December, it was in mid-December. We've also met with our CTE teachers, our high school principals, around the kind of career learning portion of this work. Our next step is we will, it was to be this week, but it was canceled, but we will present to industry partners a draft of our kind of PPS, career-related learning growth plan is how I would call it. So where do, we've worked with our principals, we've mapped kind of the local economic trends and as part of that, and culminating in a sort of a recommendation around which career programs we would want to expand, where and why.
Okay, so how about the budget implications for all of this, my friends? Well, okay, so first of all, in terms of the college and career readiness budget implications, we see, first of all, we do believe that additional counseling capacity to support post-secondary readiness will be a really valuable investment. So that would, mean the addition of more counselors. We all are aware that in the high school system design recommendation was a 300-to-1 students to counselor for our high schools. Currently, we're at around 400-to-1, and so so we think that would be important. That came through from several committees. And we also know that the rest of the system would benefit from more preferential counselor staffing as well. So it just system-wide, this could be a really exciting investment. Additionally, development of indicators to determine how we know if students are college and career ready. So, and the Nike School Innovation Fund grant that Sarah was just referencing is where we believe we already have the resources and are working on that already. So that is, at the moment, resource neutral to the budget process, and we hope that furnishes us with the tools we need to understand the system and move it forward. And then also to fund acceleration strategies, so the ones that were talked about both in your recent budget amendment process in terms of supporting the efforts both of the Advanced Scholars Program as well as nourishing the opportunity for teachers to meet and look at developing their own programs at other schools, particularly Roosevelt and Madison, schools that have both indicated an interest in taking next steps around what we call acceleration strategies. And so that may be related to IB, it may be related to dual credit opportunities, it may be related to advanced placement courses, and just sort of opening those gates further, but providing students the support they need to succeed in them. And then in terms of college and career readiness continuing, Sarah, you want to talk about a couple more?
Sure. So earlier I referenced the idea of having a kind of a college and career exploration course. So the idea here is that we would fund a college and career exploration readiness semester-long course at one or two schools, probably two schools. It would be a pilot, just to get it going. And the dollars to support the curriculum for this course would already be funded in our ODE grant, but the budget item would be additional teaching FTE to make this shift. The other item is the expanded career preparation offerings at all high schools. So we've talked about the need to expand our CTE as well as just career preparation in general. So the budget ask here would be supporting additional teachers, and actually another really critical ask is around getting the career preparation, CTE, supplies, equipment, and materials, because to date we haven't necessarily had sort of one existing budget in one place to sort of to support the CTE equipment, materials, and that sort of thing.
So those are related to the college and career readiness recommendation. And then in terms of the early response system, the counseling resource clearly is applicable here in terms of just access to counseling support, the specialization that counselors bring in terms of really supporting students, staying engaged and on track, recruiting them back and connecting them. So that's one. Another is we recommend piloting an early response system, as we've discussed, in 2 or 3 high schools, so trying to scale in, doing a more intensive thing than just the academic priority system that we've used so far. So there would be additional potential for us wanting to use social workers also as a resource in that early response system. And whether those would be school-specific or cluster-specific, so that you're looking at sort of whole family systems being supported. And then finally, management support. We know that our college and career readiness system needs oversight in really a more explicit way. And so we do make a recommendation in the budget process around FTE for that. So that is our brief report. Thank you.
You guys did a great job getting through a lot of information, and I'm sure that there are a number of questions from my colleagues. So Director Buell, did you want to start off, or do you want to wait?
I'm still kind of messing a little bit.
Okay. Anyone else? Director
I
Morgan?
didn't get this material.
Thank you very much. And this is actually, I think this is one of those things that when you move into a budget cycle that isn't all about cutting, you begin to talk about things like this and preparing our students for that next level, which is clearly a part of our mission. A couple of things that I wanted to mention. One, I'll go back to the partner thing. And I think if I were to put on my nonprofit hat, it would be that we're probably a little light on how we engage in partners. And the reason I say that is because there really is an opportunity with existing programs in the system and with relationships where we can leverage some of our own resources and really build capacity, greater capacity in those partnerships. So I want to maybe think about that a little bit as we move forward in talking about this. The other thing, and this is going into sort of the components of the early response, I really keyed in on the personalization. I think that's really incredibly key. And I think a very important piece of that is around cultural relevance. And particularly when we look at the disaggregated data around our communities of color, we see a much greater need in having some culturally relevant programming to serve those students, particularly those students when we're talking about early response, we're talking about high needs, we're talking about safety nets. These are students that oftentimes either choose not to or don't find it relevant to them to navigate the current system that exists. Our obligation, because that issue is there, our obligation as a district doesn't dissolve and say, well, now we don't have to worry about them. We still do, and we still have to work with what is work and create programming and partner with providers that offer programming that's relevant. So I would look at how do we, in that personalization, how do we really define, particularly working with communities of color, how do we what's our angle, or what's our strategy around providing cultural relevance and as we personalize this work? Because the outcome, if we don't, is that we'll continue to develop systems that are good for some kids and probably not good for all kids. So.
Absolutely.
I have a couple.
Director Reed?
I
Couple
thought
of
that was a
random
question.
different ideas. One is I think we owe a huge thanks to the to Nike and the Nike Innovation Fund. It sounds like
Absolutely.
we're gonna be able to do some really great, new, innovative work in each of our high schools around college preparation, so thank you for that. Couple things I wanted to mention in terms, I love the idea that we're moving toward college and career readiness as the goal rather than just the graduation rate. I think if you set that higher bar, the graduation rate will come with it. And I know that already within our state achievement compacts, there's an expectation for 9 college credits to be earned while kids are in high school. And I know as we set our own goals as a district, one thing that would be exciting for us to be thinking of in terms of college and career readiness is whether or not we would want to be thinking about a more audacious goal of, every child who graduates from Portland Public Schools has a year of college credit under their belt, or a CTE certification, or whatever it might be. But again, if you're looking at college and career ready, the best thing we can do is help our students while they're in high school understand that they are college material and they can be successful taking college courses. And by the way, it gives us such an incredible opportunity to make college affordable for our kids as we go. So it's a really exciting pathway. One of the other things I was thinking about in terms of the college and career ready, and it's kind of a dream at some point, that we could ensure that every one of our students gets a field trip or 2 or 3 to community college campuses during their middle school, perhaps, or high school careers. And it sounded like that might have already been in the thought process. Looking at Director Buell's idea about what are we doing at the middle school level, I guess my dream would be that we start those college visits when kids are in middle school and help kind of paint the picture for them, set the vision for them of who they can be, how they can be, when they can be, but that they would be college bound. Or again, maybe if you're at PCC, looking at the CTE kind of certification route, whatever it might be. But could we have a dream that every 6th grader would take a field trip to visit PCC? Could we have a dream that every 7th grader would take a field trip to visit, a local college, Portland State or UP? Could we have a dream that every 8th grader visits the University of Portland or Portland State and spends a whole day on campus and just envisions what their future could be? And is that somewhere where our partners could step in and kind of help us with that, and or our university partners maybe help us with something like that? And then the final thought I had in terms of looking at, I guess what I would consider to be things like, care teams in schools as part of the high school action team. We took a group, and I was privileged to be part of that group to go and visit Hillsborough and visit their Hillsborough care teams. And when you look at those care teams, it's it's a social worker that's part of it. It's a school resource officer that's part of it. And there's a lot of resources that kind of go into supporting students with very specific interventions. As I've been looking at some of what you're talking about here on early response, college and career ready, there's a lot of different ways that we could be thinking about supporting our students through our budget. And it's another reason why, as we're having the discussion around our teacher contract, I think it's important for us to be looking at workload and looking at class size and all of those issues as part of our budget discussion, because it's a much broader discussion than just locking all of our money into a contract with a group of employees, as opposed to having a more open and robust conversation about what our students need and how we're going to actually get to a much higher graduation rate as we go. So clearly that involves more teachers in our classroom. Clearly that involves smaller class sizes. Clearly that involves supporting our teachers with less workload, but it also involves a whole lot of other things. It's exciting for me to see this report. I have to give huge thanks to the high school action team and to the 33 people who were on that. I mean, just really intense and very intentional work totally student-focused on how we're going to support our kids to be college and career ready. I mean, really, really exciting. And I'd also like, as we go, for you to just kind of explain next steps.
Some comments on that?
Director Atkins.
Sure, maybe just piggybacking on that, I really appreciate your laying that out so clearly, Director Regan. Again, Superintendent Smith, can you just give really high level, like the timeline? We're going to be moving into this budget process where we're going to see specific numbers attached to a range of different potential investments, right? So is that going to be coming, can you just give us the high level of the timing for that, or do we know yet?
It is. Well, part of what we're trying to do with you, so I do my budget message to you on March 17th. Between here and there, we want to use substantive chunks of each board meeting to make different budget considerations visible to you. So, I mean, that's basically the time frame is between here and there.
So we're hearing about range of
you're going to be here
different-
substance, right?
And then mid-March, you're going to come through, you're going to say, here's what I think we should be
You've got
investing.
internal teams looking at actual budget numbers here, and the budget numbers attached to this are significantly greater than the kind of money we're going to be talking
know,
about.
that's just it.
But I will say different categories overlap. So you're seeing a number of things here that are really about school-based FTE that will be under
Right.
consideration with the district staffing team. You've got some departmental budget things that are represented here that will come up through departments. So part of, and actually I'm going to say in an impressive fashion, even though you heard about 5 different subcommittees from the high school action team, they then went through a process of listening to each other's presentations and then integrating, okay, you heard this synthesized down into here are the 2 buckets, here are overlapping strategies. I mean, they've done a bunch of work that were discrete committees looking at discrete strategies, trying to whittle it down to what does that look like when you get it to a budget.
Right.
A similar process will be going on internally, looking at how these things all connect by the time it's coming to you as a
Great.
proposal.
No, thanks, that's helpful.
I want to just do one other connection here because Director Davidson is a part of our superintendent advisory, Super SAC, so Superintendent Advisory Committee. And one of the discussions we had about the graduation rate was both my perceptions of what were the impactors and what things had been going on that impacted graduation rate, and then student point of view of what were the things. And we were listening to people talk about things that they felt personally impacted by, that they thought had impacted the graduation rate in their schools. And as Andrew was listening, he was all of a sudden like, oh, I'm so excited because these are all the things we've been talking about in the high school action team. And they were. I mean, people were calling out, you know, career coordinators, which has been a recent add, even as we have chopped budgets. We added back somebody on each high school campus to be a career coordinator, and then actually have gradually built them up to full-time. And that was one of the call-outs. Naviance, which is a computer tool to help you plan how you are using your time and track your credits, was called out by a number of different students. The block scheduling was called out as a specific one. Anyway, it was exciting, and it was fun for me to listen to you, listen to a student point of view, and be excited that you heard those things echoed on the high school action team. So.
I'm still, sorry, I still got my. And I should, before I even said anything, I want to say thank you as well to the entire team and to all of you for your leadership. So just to, I know this is the high school action team, but just real quick, are there other folks working on the early tracking and attendance monitoring, how we can do better at the other grades as well, knowing that it is such a key piece from kindergarten on? Is that something we're going to hear about, or is that?
So, so our recommendations look at if there were, for instance, so one of the requests is for social workers, and we really want to look at those as cluster-based rather than specifically only to high schools, because we do believe that systems are improved by those interventions as well. So, yes.
Okay, great. So my next thing is just really around this, just the transformations that are underway statewide and the whole notion of collective impact, so that we have not just partnerships, but that we're actually having true alignment across the different silos, whether it be healthcare, education, housing, corrections, workforce, and so forth. And that there's alignment and shared outcomes and accountability for those. So as I understand it, we've got an early learning hub potentially emerging in Multnomah County, right, that's going to align school districts and human services and so forth, which is super exciting. And so I guess I'm wondering, and just the opportunity to work more effectively and use the limited resources we do have across different agencies, jurisdictions, systems to serve kids better and families. So I'm just wondering, so that's coming, so that's really exciting. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that in other times. But I'm just wondering if there's similar opportunities at the high school level where we can be doing that kind of collective impact. Not, totally we need more and better partnerships, but it really does go beyond that. So any thoughts or info on that?
So two have emerged that immediately come to mind. One is that we're working with PCC on further opportunity for dual credit opportunities across more schools than just the courses that we have now, particularly focused on math, because we know that math success early in college is really a gatekeeper for persistence and success in college. Another one is a recent grant application with Work Systems, Inc. around college and career readiness, CTE opportunities connected with Alliance High School, our in-district alternative schools. So really looking at how our college and career opportunities really a robust part of getting kids back on track, re-incentivizing, connecting with school, particularly for those students who are significantly off track, 17 and older, 7 or fewer credits. So so how do we really pull those kids back in? So
the other ones I'll add to that is, the work we've been doing on Cradle to Career with All Hands Raised, which is the 6 districts, and the newest collaborative, and we've been very slow to make sure we're getting traction with the existing collaboratives before adding another one, but the one that is being added currently is grades 11 to 14. So looking at the relationship between K-12 and higher ed. And we're really excited to be doing it. It's one we've been calling for and saying this one makes no sense for each individual district to do this by themselves. So we're doing that one. The partnership with PCC on looking at math is an exciting one in that we're doing this at 3 of our high schools and really saying figure this out between faculty, principals, and the presidents at the Cascade and Southeast campus. To really look at what are the barriers in math specifically, but how are we doing connectivity at a teacher and individual school level that we're increasing dual credit opportunities, but that we then make replicable across our system. So that's a really exciting one. And the other one I'll just say, the All Hands Raised, where we're looking at cross-district and cross-agency kinds of collaboration. We've done at different. So the early learning, there's been an attendance initiative that's been really looking at what are best practices across districts, both policy-wise and practice-wise, and then establishing pilots in each of our districts to say, okay, how do you make this happen at a school level in a way that then you work, but where we're learning from each other's best practice. I think that's been really effective. How we are communicating with families about connecting to kindergarten and some of the early kindergarten kinds of programming. We're doing that and sharing that practice across districts. So there's a bunch of how are we transcending our own little district boundaries with what we do.
With the county and
yes.
Healthcare. I mean, my dream would be you go and you get your medical home, is your school home, is your, and you live upstairs, you know what I mean? I mean, that we can, no, but really that's how we're going to save money and have better outcomes, rather than having families have to go to all these different places, so.
So I'm going to say one thing that was very cool this last year was understanding that families that show up early to register for kindergarten as opposed to show up the first day, but you connect during the summer, so you're actually building relationship with the school prior to just showing up the first day of school. Huge impact in terms of success, because you know what you're expecting when you come in the door. But we had area companies who were part of publicizing in bills you were receiving as a family. I mean, there was a huge effort to do this kindergarten like register early, but it was part of what came out of the Cradle to Career Collaborative is how does everybody participate. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
So there's one other one also that I think is now public is what's happening with Open Meadow, which is one of our great community-based organization and partners. And I think that they're looking at really moving their work more to an early intervention model and moving their work more into middle school grades, and not only serving Portland students, but also doing outreach to some of the other Portland school districts and Gresham Barlow as well. And it's incredibly exciting to hear about their work. But again, the idea is catch kids early and bring them back early, which is really exciting. So.
See if I can quickly summarize this. I think it's wonderful that the superintendent's bringing forward different parts of the budget for us to discuss. I apologize for the late hour, but I guess if she's going to do that, it's good for me. I can get some of this stuff straight in public, which is where I like to have it straight. So we have a personalization program for each kid, where each kid in a high school gets this personal program that's set up some way. That's the personalization stuff. Is that correct? Like a plan? They develop a plan through some system? Am I wrong on that?
That's correct.
That's correct. So every high school kid that comes through develops a plan of some sort. And then we have a early response team that is checking to see how they're doing.
That's our proposal.
So we
Right.
don't have
So we
that
do
now.
have
That's what I'm
that
trying
in
to
some
straighten
schools.
this. Yes, see where
Yes.
we are now. Okay, some
Yeah,
schools.
so we do in some
and then we move to an intervention team that if they're not doing so well, we bring in an intervention team, but we haven't made any guesses around how many kids that would involve or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And then we have, if you go to the intervention team, then they'll send kids to partners, to various partners. It might be the county or healthcare or that type of thing. Is that how we're thinking?
It could be. So it certainly could be school-based resources.
Or it might be outside.
Or it might be outside.
Now, we don't have a great reputation for working with those people, but we do have a certain number that we work with. And are we thinking then, as your group, meaning the people doing the work around this, are they thinking of expanding those numbers, or are they thinking of just lining up with what we already have?
I think it's a little bit of both. So there is a function that the early response system needs, which I would just call general coordination. So some schools have a lot of interventions, have a lot of partners on site, but one of their challenges is literally coordinating all of those, determining, making sure that one kid doesn't have 7 different mentors or whatever it is, right? So there is a piece of that. So in some cases, it's really about just aligning our existing resources to be more strategic and effective. In some cases, it's going to be, because as we wrote in our budget, we talked about doing a pilot at 2 to 3 schools. In some of those cases, we're advocating for expanding personnel to deliver interventions and or coordinate the work.
Is that the social service coordinator?
Correct.
That we used to have at Roosevelt that we got rid of? That was the one, right? Yeah. And so we're looking at putting these social service coordinators into 2 or 3 schools? Is the recommendation 3 schools or 2 schools? Or they already have one at Madison, correct?
So I think the way to describe this is a school intervention team has there's sort of a wide variety of supports and personnel that make up that team. Different schools right now have different players on that team. So what's occurring at Madison might look different than what's occurring at Roosevelt. They might need something different. So when we asked one of our schools, what's the position that you most need, they said, I actually need a data analyst. I need someone to look at my data. But that was not the same answer that another principal
Fire that person, by the way, while you're at it out there, the data analysis person instead of the person analysis. We need people out there in those schools that are dealing with the kids. So the social service coordinator, you got 2 to 3 schools. And that would that be, since Madison has one, would that probably be, are you recommending like Roosevelt and Jefferson, or is it that we normally go with?
So if I could answer, so currently through the High School Graduation Initiative Grant, the HSGI grant, both Franklin and Roosevelt High Schools have community school outreach coordinators. And so they have unique roles. But in each of those schools, the administrator comprises a team that has that outreach person, community partners that are working in the school, the counselors, other teachers, depending on the student that they are staffing any given day or any given time. And depending on if they see positive movement in terms of the indicators for how students are doing around attendance, around academic achievement, and around behavior. And so, the proposal for us is that, and we see really phenomenal growth in both Franklin's and Roosevelt's graduation rates, as well as others stay in school and on time, on track at the end of 9th grade. Like, all the indicators are showing us that those are positive. So that's part of where this recommendation comes from. We know that that grant will be extinguished within a year, and the federal government has made several cuts to the grant. So what we want to do is not be dependent on chance, but dependent on, we know this is a working set of interventions. We know that there's just an additional coordination cartilage holds the whole skeleton of support for the student together better. So.
And so there's two other strands. One is just the CTE strand, which basically looks like it kind of sits out there by itself, which is fine by me. I mean, that's kind of where it belongs. And with partners around CTE things.
Yes.
And then the other strand appears to be this classes, what we're doing around AP, dual credit, and so forth, and exposure to high school. I mean, exposure to college-oriented stuff. I don't know much about the AP dual credit. I couldn't, but let's go back to the classes. We're thinking of having a class that basically teaches you about college. It's had financial stuff in here. I was saying, I mean, is it a teach you about life class and how to get into college and how to write resumes? And I mean, is that what the thinking is?
So the career education class that we would be considering would, likely be designed by the schools that want to implement it or want to pilot it. But we would recommend that it have both soft skills and cognitive skills. So cognitive and non-cognitive skill development. So again, back to our graphic that shows tenacity, which is sort of a, how do you teach tenacity? It's important and complex skill to develop, as well as just, here's what a financial aid form looks like, and here's how you do it. Here are the timelines you have to meet in order to do it. Here are scholarship applications, and here's how you do them. So it would be a whole variety of both of those things.
Are you thinking including things like how to deal with credit? These life skill things that have to do, you're thinking of those two?
Yes. So independence, related to college and career, definitely.
And related to life, maybe too?
And life.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to, I have two other comments, and then I think I'm done here. One, it'd be nice if we never heard 40-40-20 again. I'll send you the paper by Tom Olson, who just recently died, if I think about it, and where he talks about how 40-40-20 is basically some sort of farcical system that really isn't based in hardly anything at all. But the other question I had, let's go back to that. I just want to make a comment on attendance. Well, they had all the big attendance stuff in the newspaper and so forth. And yeah, if a kid isn't there, then they're not learning. But attendance, there's another component to attendance that we should be looking at around that issue, and that's if a kid's not there, that child, when he comes back or she comes back, let's say they're gone 2 days, back for 2 days, gone a day, back for 3 days, gone 3 days, back for 2 days, gone 1 day, back for 3 days. That particular, that's a typical way that it takes place, particularly in middle school. That's incredibly disruptive, not just to that kid. That kid's done in that class, generally, unless he's a heck of a student. He's finished or she's finished in that class of ever doing well because they've missed those and they're totally out. But it also affects the entire class, because when that child comes back, the teacher's got to now deal with that kid who's now more disruptive, and who now need special help just to find out what they did yesterday. And so that's just as big an issue almost for other children as it is for the child himself or herself who's missing. And it'd be nice if we would think in that attendance realm what we can do. I mean, what can we do with those children when they come back? Right now we toss them back into the class. Maybe that's not the best idea for the child or for the class or for the education. And I just think that's something you might want to talk to some teachers about who are out in the field and say, hey, well, is this a problem? And they'll and outline the problem and see if there's some solutions to it. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Oh, Director Belisle, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I actually just wanted to follow up, and you just actually mentioned again that I really appreciated there were all these foundations of what's important, and then there were the 3 kind of other dimensions they were called to prepare students, and I just wanted to call out that I really appreciated identifying tenacity, because whether it's culturally specific information about how it connects to folks, whether it's students who prefer to learn with their hands versus some other way of learning, that capacity to have tenacity, that maybe it requires incentives for some students, but that ability to continue to go at it, just all the research I've seen is a key component, more important than academics, more important than many other pieces, about people sticking with it and feeling like they have a reason to. So I think that's why mentorships, all those pieces are so important, is it gives reason to people, gives students a reason to stick with it. So I just want to highlight that.
Sports, you play to the end.
And it's related to resilience too, right? I mean, for the children who have faced traumas in their life and
We're still
the
out there, still working at it.
right, but the ability to overcome, whether it's one or multiple, ACEs is the, I can't remember what ACEs stands for, so I'm sorry to use an acronym, but adverse childhood experiences. Anyway, so I mean, if you had that trauma, that can impact your entire life, but the resilience is how you move past that and how you survive it. So anyway, that's related to that as well.
No? Okay, just briefly for me, one of the things that you talked about, that one-on-one connection with students made me recall when I was running for the school board 5 years ago, first time, when I went to visit Cleveland and visited with Paul Cook, the principal there, and a couple of teachers. And they had a program very similar to that in place at Cleveland at that time, and were having great success with keeping their students in school. I hope they still have it. I don't know. But I was very impressed with it, and would love to see something like that replicated, where they took each one of their academic priority students and had a teacher mentor for that student assigned to them. It was a very impressive program and great contribution both by the principal and by the teachers who agreed to be involved with that. So.
And now we see the significant increase in their graduation.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that struck me in my day job, I do career work with college students. And the things that you brought up about soft skills are exactly the same things I hear from employers every day. Those soft skills, how to get up, how to go to work, how to shake someone's hand, how to look them in the eye, how to be able to talk to them, professional dress. All those kinds of things are things that are collaboration, communication, all those things are employers looking for both in our high school students. They'd probably be delighted. I'd be delighted if they got those kinds of things at high school, because right now we're teaching them to them at the university. So, it'd be much better if they did them in high school. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys and to all the members of the high school action team. And also to
several others of whom are
yes, I see. Are you out there? You want to stand up? Yay!
Yes, thank you.
And to our board liaisons, I know Bobby was there, a big contributor, and I think Ruth filled in a couple of times.
Tom
not
also.
official, and then of course Tom, and then of course Andrew, who's already shared his experience with us. So thank you to all of my colleagues for that too. So thank you very much, and look forward to hearing more during the budget.
Great. Thank you.
Nice job. Oh, that took so long. I almost Oh, what's next?
It's gonna happen. Come on. Keep focused.
Woo-hoo! Oh, we're a half hour early. Okay, so our next agenda item is the Oregon School Boards Association Legislative Policy Committee vote. On December 13th, the board voted on a number of positions that were open through the OSBA. The Legislative Policy Committee's position 17 resulted in a tie between Francisco Acosta Jr. and Mary Lou Baitke. Tonight, the board will conduct a voice vote for position 17. Director Regan, being a representative on the OSBA, would you like to offer any comments on this?
Sure. So first of all, the Oregon School Boards Association is an association that supports school boards and school board members across Oregon. So there's 197 different districts. And one of the things they do is they have a legislative policy committee, and it's made up of about 20 or so board members from, again, every region of the state. That group, along with the 20 or so board members on the OSBA board, make up the Legislative Policy Committee, the total committee. So in this particular case, we already voted for Francisco Acosta, who is a campus monitor, by the way, at Franklin High School. More importantly, he is an MESD, a Multnomah County Education Service Director board member. We nominated him and we voted for him already. It turns out that of the 9 districts in our regions that could vote, 8 voted, and it was a tie 4-4. And so they're just asking us to redo that vote again. And so we're bringing forward the same person. He is wonderful. I think he'd make a big contribution to the OSBA legislative policy team.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments on the candidates? Okay. We'll now have a voice vote on position 17. I'll call the candidates alphabetically. Please note that you can only vote for one candidate per position, and we only have one position, so one candidate. Oh, okay, so all in favor of Francisco Acosta Jr., please say yes.
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 Is that everybody? I'm trying to.
That was everybody.
Steve, were you on
Yes,
that one as
I
well?
voted.
Thank you. 7, okay, all in favor of Mary Lou? None? 0, thank you. The OSB Legislative Policy Committee, position 17, for Francisco Acosta Jr. is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Davidson voting.
Yes.
Yes, great, thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck to Francisco. So we will now adjourn. The next meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, February 18th, 2014. This meeting of the board is now adjourned.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, everybody.